The third speaker and first keynote speaker in the 2018 Innovation in Food and Agribusiness Forum is Mr. Allan McCallum, Chair of the Kahn and Tassel Groups. The title of Allan's presentation is AgTech, Australia's Disruptor or Saviour. Allan's presentation focuses on the challenges of how to bring agribusiness concept to market from a start-up to listing on the Australian Stock Exchange in a period of rapid disruption. Allan provided examples of how agriculture has always embraced change and used the current facial recognition technology in the salmon industry to make his point that the industry continues to adapt to new technology. He suggested that this latest wave of AgTech is bringing more rapid and greater change to food production and agriculture through innovation that is raising productivity and lowering costs. For example, the Kahn Group has embraced AgTech and set on a path to build a world-class Australian business in the emerging medical cannabis industry. The Kahn Group has gone from a start-up in 2004 to successfully raising $78 million in capital raisings in 2017. The group is now an industry leader in the market and compliant with the Office of Drug Control in the US, and the first company to be issued with a cannabis research and cultivation licence by the Australian government. Now, an important point that Allan makes is that while AgTech is a key driver for innovation in his new business and in this sector, gaining regulatory approval and working with regulators matters just as much for success in the food sector. So please enjoy Allan's presentation.
The future of agriculture is bright, and I had a 9 billion figure by 2030, so there's another billion in that 20 years, but I figured my interest would be a bit ordinary after 2030, so I'll go with a 9. But Deloitte identified agribusiness as the third fastest growing sector across global industries and placed first for Australian comparative advantage. So the 100 million is going to be a shoo-in. It's going to be a shoo-in. And in fact, your department got together all the R&D corporations under a program of accelerating precision to decision, or P2D. And that was an initiative of getting all the R&D corps, CSIRO, a few unis and a lot of other people. And they identified that AgTech can grow the agribusiness industry by $20 billion, which is a 25% increase, so you're just about there. That comes through in automation and labour savings of about 7.4 billion, genetic gains through objective data of 2.9 billion, tailoring inputs, the right fertiliser, the right water, etc., of 2.3 billion, and market access and biosecurity. So it's a pretty interesting read if you've got a bit of time. That just puts it into graphic on a global annual growth industry. Agriculture's third, but in Australia it's in the best position to take advantage of that. I believe we're right into the agribusiness opportunity, and if you look at the grains industry with their precision farming techniques and why they're getting a productivity yield from the beeline system of guidance and everything else, where you sow the next year's crop between the last year's, and the fertiliser monitoring and precision agriculture there's certainly the cropping industry is going to be a big benefit going forward as well. The irrigation side of it, I farm up at Kerrang, full-time farmer, Saturdays when I get home, Sundays before I leave. But I'm on that irrigation system. There's been a couple of $1 billion of your taxes gone in to modernise that system, which was 100 years old, and now I order it over the phone. I can change the flow rate over the phone, and the water's there, whereas before it was a 4-day order and fluctuating up and down. It used to drive you nuts. The dairy and beef industry with their dairy and auto milking, the monitoring of the cows, whatever they're doing every minute of the day, and then matching the feed is giving them the productivity improvements. But the salmon is the important one, and agriculture to me includes salmon. And because it is going to be the oceans of the world that take up that challenge to feed the populations going forward, and they're going to get with wild catch stable. It's the growth in aquaculture that's going to feed the world. So just some of the high tech and the where we've come from. And that the old technology I've got there is actually an improvement. The previous model had a person with a scoop throwing the feed in the pens, and now this guy's shooting it out there. But now with the new technology, we've do all the feeding of the fish farms around Tasmania from the CBD of Hobart on the 8th floor. And the person there monitoring those screens is achieving a 10% growth and an 11% improvement in the feed conversion ratio, which we spend over 100 million a year on feed. And so if we can improve that feed conversion ratio, and they harvested a pen the other day at 1.14, which is that same pen last year, using our different system, not the bad one there, with on-site feeding was 1.33, which is going to 10% additional growth and 11% better feed conversion. You do the numbers, we could be in for a good year. But this is also lowering our fish growing costs. It's improving the environmental outcomes. It's improved the safety. We don't have to put a person in a boat to get out to a feed pod. And if you go to some of the sites, they're an hour from the land base. And it's also improving fish health and welfare. So the guys and girls there are instantly managing, monitoring the temperature, the swells, the dissolved oxygen and the salinity. Now, how far can this digital stuff go? And salmon facial recognition, you know, that fish over there, and I'm sorry, it's not as clear as it could be, but that fish over there to me looks like the other 9 million that we put in annually. However, they're not, and there's a program in Norway, they get sea lice, we don't get sea lice, and they're doing facial recognition of fish because they'll come up for air every 4 days. Just to reinflate their bladders. And at that stage, they'll be guided through a 3D setup, and that facial recognition will recognise whether they've got salmon lice. They must be sitting there going, oh shit, you know, I've got a lice. And then they'll be drafted off so that they will only then treat those infected fish, and that'll improve their productivity as far as death rates and everything else go by treating 75% of fish that don't need treating. The Irish have even taken it one step further. They've got facial recognition of cows, and they're monitoring their food, water, matching that, and even their fertility. So it's coming. It's not only at an airport near you. The artificial intelligence side of it will grow farmers' knowledge compared to the ag note that you used to get in the mail. You've got instant access to a lot of knowledge now. And that's being used in health and legal extensively now, the artificial intelligence, and with health in oncology and treatment of cancer patients. They're just talking to the machine, and the machine will give them the answer or give them the probabilities of the best answer. And that's part of that IBM Watson analytics, which analyses unstructured data and can read 40 million documents in 15 or 16 seconds. So it's just, and that data stockpile is growing at 60% per annum, so you know it's all out there. In helping the poor old producer get there, and the top 20% of adopters will get over the difficult to navigate. The returns on investment, farmers will pick up things if they see $1 in it pretty quick, but they're a little bit slow as a general sense, apart from the top 20% will say, and they want to see some sort of return on it before they're always capital constrained. And there is a lack of trust in the data space of who owns the data if you start putting yours in there, but I'm sure these issues will be put out, and the school-based and knowledge requirements is just a continuous improvement as the old guys drop off and the new ones come through, and there's an opportunity for the likes of La Trobe and others to hasten that. But the biggest issue I find, and I think most of my rural colleagues would, is the unreliable telco system. It's not much good having a huge, big data ability and the bloody phone drops out. And it does 7 miles out of Kerrang and it drops out, and you get a bit cranky about that. But as far as the structural changes that it's going to cause, and this is a little analogy of, and you can put that aircraft carrier and its support team around it. You could say that's the traditional structure of business. And all these others, that could be the marketing department there, and that's the HR department, and that's the other department. And it's on a course, and it'll be, you could even apply it to a department store or a service industries that we've got. And I like to look at this, what we're going through is all these little flying things here that'll go in any direction at any time, can change straight away. They'll probably crash into one another occasionally, but they've got that flexibility. And what you're seeing in ag and food, and particularly in food processing, well, big food companies, where once upon a time the old mantra was buy the business and then integrate it. And what they're doing now, they're finding, is they buy the business and leave it alone. So the jet ski stays out on its own and works with the battleship hovering there. But that's the way I'd like to see it. So the second part I'd like to wander through, and it's probably a subject, being in a university, it's ironic that I'm talking about medical cannabis, because I'm sure there was a lot grown along those riverbanks out there over the last 50 years. However, the regulatory regime doesn't allow that anymore. So this is just one story of how we started and how we got to where we are. And there's a million different ways as a startup and a million different tracks you'll take. But hopefully there's a bit of a few learnings in here that may help you on the way. CAN was founded in 2014 as an agricultural export opportunity to the USA. And it was all based on a CBD hemp oil going into the USA. Allegedly there was a maritime judge's opinion that we could cross the ocean, go straight into 4 or 5 states, what's ever up there, and not be in compliance, and not be too likely to get pinged. However, when you really questioned that, the guy said that you'd probably have to test this, which meant it would get confiscated and you'd be in court. But I was invited to get involved in this by the founder, and it was my corporate background and some exposure to capital markets, and my network that I had was probably a better way to put it. And as far as the market's concerned, I knew absolutely nothing. I'm probably one of the few people in the room who have never touched the stuff. Had you all worried, didn't it? Do I have to declare? And that includes Ag College and the Army, so I'm a real purist. But I knew nothing about it, and I started reading a bit about it and just got involved with it. And a trip to Colorado and a trip to California before I was convinced that, yeah, there was something here and there was something that could do some good for some people. So we sat down and we decided the business needed money, so we got some seed capital in off some of us, and we had another crack at that. That gave us about $200,000, and that gave us the ability to demonstrate our capability. So once we started building containers and demonstrating that ability, we put out an information memorandum in April 2015 and raised $1.6 million. And then we were burning through it, and we decided we better go again. So we put another information memorandum out in December, and it was based on the legislation that the Victorian government was talking about. And so in these businesses there is a regulatory risk. And sure enough, we got, I forget what we got in, maybe 1.7 million. And the following day or two, the federal government legislation was announced, which just blew us away. So we're sitting there raising this money on this proposition, but we're really over here. So we gave all the money back, which was a sad day, but it was the right thing to do. And so the directors underwrote the business until we could reissue the IM under the federal legislation, because it comes under the UN Narcotics Convention. The state government was going to just forget about that, I think. And we targeted 1.3 and we got 2 million in with an option on it. So we were once again cashed up after having to change what we were doing, because we'd just run out of money, and go back on a sustenance level with a couple of us underwriting it. So we then we built this showpiece with containers, fitted them all out and started growing industrial hemp just to prove a capability. And we thought we had a plan, we had the right timing to go public. I put in there that once you're going for public money, even at IM stage, there's some onerous conditions on you, there's no shortcuts. And we had 21 due diligence meetings in the lead up to that. We had due diligence meetings with the IM, but they weren't quite as intensive as that. So there was a lot of people who were putting a lot of time, lawyers, accountants, etc. The options from the second IM were exercised. Logically, they were out there at 15 cents and we were listing at 30 cents. And the IPO raised 13 million. We had a Canadian major in Aurora Cannabis who we've got technical service agreements with come in and cornerstone, and it was fully underwritten. And so we were off and running. We listed on the ASX in the 4th of May and we closed on the first day at 64 cents. And our plan was stage one was a southern facility at an unnamed location. And we built that up. It's got 200 square metres of flowering area there, and that's a picture of us with AgriBio team when they were growing, and that's where the germplasm come from with the minister. The stage two, the northern facility, was going to be about 800 square metres, and we were going to retrofit a glass house, but retrofitting is not a good idea. So we're using that for R&D. We are growing some product there, but it'll become our tissue culture centre. And in the meantime, we'd moved our headquarters just up the road here at Walter and Eliza Institute Hall. And then we had our stage three plans, and we went out to the capital markets in November last year and raised 78 million at $2.50 a share. And the stage three will be built at Melbourne Airport, and Aurora took an opportunity to creep 3% of that zone, which they can do under Corps law. But the new facility will be 23,000 square metres of grow flowering area. So it's a 100 million plus campaign. So that's quite exciting and a lot of work. The Can Group today, we are well capitalised. We're industry leaders, and we've made a point of being an industry leader all the way through in a credible sense. There's no advocates and others associated with us. We talk the language of government, we talk the language of the regulator. The Office of Drug Control's done 8 audits on our facility, the southern facility. 6 of those we don't have to pay for because they're bringing down people to train. And so we've had a really close, good working relationship with them. We don't get any special treatments, but the relationships are important. We've had 24 harvests. We're using the materials being used for the Victorian Government paediatric epilepsy cohort. So the learnings from the can journey is that the market, you've got to have a product that the consumers want. Someone mentioned that earlier. And it must have a good understanding of that market. And all the estimates seem to be that it will be globally $100 billion by 2025. So it's come from nowhere in a number of years to 100 billion. And some of the other numbers are just Hits Lotto numbers, so you don't worry about them. But you've also got to understand what could disrupt the market, and clearly our biggest risk, and positive as well, Canada's just gone recreational and they can't supply. Maybe we can help, and we will. But what can disrupt your market? And if there's a debate going on within the industries about the UN Convention, Canada thinks they'll be okay. I think our people here would say they're going to get tossed out of it, which means they can't import or export, which then opens up the rest of Europe for us. So it's a pretty good win-win. The other critical issue that you've got to consider along the way is the role of the founder and, the strategy. It's going to change. People talk about a living document. In a startup, it's living at a really fast pace and it'll change every few days. And you've got to be adaptable and flexible. And think of the aircraft carrier. You can't afford to be set in your ways and think you're going to just steam straight ahead. There's going to be someone cutting across your bows. The role of the founder is a critical one, and it's one of the difficult ones, and I'll sound like a professor now. All the research will say. You were using that a lot, James. And the role of the founder is it's critical, and I was fortunate with Michael that after he invited me on, he also realised he wasn't the right person to be the CEO, so we put a professional CEO in there, and the strategy sort of differed from his original USA. And so he moved aside and let us get on. By that stage, we had a good team around us to run the business. So if you are a startup and you are a founder, be prepared to let go and trust the people around you. The scale thing is, when we started the stage 3, if you read back in the first IM, I think we were looking at 4,000 square metres. And that was based on the fact that demand will be huge, it won't be a commodity. It's a bloody commodity. So within a year, so hence the 23,000 square metres will give us the size and the efficiencies that we need to compete globally. The people are the key issue. It's not only the people you're working with, you employ, it's the people that you bring in, as whether they're consultants, whether they're lawyers, whether they're accountants, whatever services you get in. If you can get to spend some time in getting the right people there, because as James mentioned, I think it was the culture in the financial services industry is slightly different to what the culture you'd find in a lot of places. And one of the last learnings is cash. And if you are a startup, you understand that already. Cash is, you've got to have enough. And there's an old agricultural saying that if you're in agriculture, shit happens. And it just comes out of left field, and if you haven't got the cash or the depth or the ability to be able to weather that, you're finished. So it's pretty ordinary. Now that's in finishing, that little thing on the right hand side has got some AI AgTech that's got the ability to give us 10% more flowering. By going to tissue culture, if we can get away from mother plants and cuttings, we could, in that facility at Tullamarine, we'd have an extra grow room. And also it opens up opportunities for exporting plants and faster putting in. I think I'm up to 110 billion already if we put salmon and ag in there. And that other shot is, no doubt, if you live on this place and you've driven around the ring road, you recognise the joint venture between AgVic and La Trobe Uni. That's going to give us the genetics and the advantages to take us forward, to give us products for patients down the road. So with that, thank you very much.